Okay, we call our meeting to order. We want to welcome everybody here this evening. And at this time, our city HR person, who is being our city clerk this evening, will call the meeting to order and take roll call.
Mayor Van Oster.
Here.
Vice Mayor York.
Here.
Commissioner Swindell.
Here.
Commissioner Jones.
Here.
Commissioner Maples.
Here. Okay, thank you. At this time, we will have our invocation. This evening, we will have Commissioner Swindell give the invocation for us.
Father, we thank you for the opportunity today to come and just be part of your kingdom on earth. Lord, we ask that you'd give wisdom to the men and women that lead this city, all across this city, Lord. Tonight, Lord, give us wisdom to do what's right by the people, Lord, and just keep us, protect us, and prosper us, Lord, in all that we do. Lord, in the mighty name of Jesus, amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Commissioner. Okay, we will quickly review our agenda for this evening. Does anybody have anything they want to add, change, etc.? Nothing? Okay, then we will proceed on. We now will go to our consent agenda, which consists of 2 items. The first is the City Commission meeting minutes from Tuesday, August 22nd, 2023. And the second is the 2023 appropriation ordinance number AO-23-17 in the amount of $5,673,235.11. So does anybody have anything on the minutes to change, correct?
Did not.
Okay. The appropriation ordinance, Commissioner York, or Vice Mayor York, excuse me. I know you usually have things to bring out on that. So if you have anything, please do so.
So we just like to highlight some of the bigger ticket items that we got. Ashland Tree Expert Company was $13,072. Atmos Energy, $48,712. Coffeyville Industries, this is for the medium income housing project payment, $53,203. Coffeyville Insurance Associates, most of this is the power plant quarterly insurance, $141,328. Coffeyville Regional Medical Center, the biggest share of this is the tax distribution, $92,406. Commercial Bank, this is on the payment on the fire truck, $30,023. Cooling Tower Depot, this was for work on the electric plant cooling tower, $114,888. Core and Main, this is Water Department supplies, $30,533. Davis Moore Automotive, this is for 3 Dodge Chargers. It's new police vehicles, $108,531. Grand River Dam Authority, for power purchases, $3,718,968. Gray Bar Electric, these are for transformers, $158,948. Hample Oil Distributors, this is jet fuel for the airport, $27,534. Hawkins, and this are chemicals for water treatment, $14,193. High Potential Power Services, $11,691. Jeff Graham Construction, this is for work on the Perkins building through that grant, $54,395. Meriton Health and Life Premiums, $40,492. Olson Associates, Cost Study Design, $28,900. SMC Electric Supply, $16,338. TC Underground, $23,322. And then payroll, $785,598. And that was for August 20th and September 3rd.
Okay. Thank you, Vice Mayor York. Does anybody else have anything on that appropriation ordinance they want to bring out? Okay. If not, I will move to approve items 1 and 2 of our consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion is made by Mayor Van Oster and seconded by Vice Mayor York to approve items 1 and 2 of the consent agenda as presented. Commissioner Jones?
Aye.
Commissioner Swindell?
Aye.
Vice Mayor York?
Aye.
Commissioner Maples?
Aye.
Mayor Van Oster?
Aye. Okay, we will now move on to comments from the public. Any citizen desiring to address the commission shall be recognized. Please advance to the podium, state his or her name and address for the record. Comments shall be limited to 3 minutes unless extended by a vote of the majority of the commission. The commission does not hear matters involving litigation or city personnel. The commission does not take action on subjects not on the agenda unless unusual or hardship conditions exist. Citizens may address the commission on agenda items as they are brought to the floor. Do we have anybody here this evening? Okay, go ahead.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name's Eric Britz. Live at 704 Spruce Street here in Coffeyville. Lee and I own 3 businesses here in town. And I know you guys are tired of hearing about the electric bills. We've been watching the commission meetings online. But I have a few questions for you. One of our buildings, 3 of them are commercial. One of them was $95 to swap the meter. The other 2 were $19.50. Not sure why the 5 times price on one. And I don't know if you all have the answer. I know you all have heard the answers aren't available in the offices here. The next question I have, we purchased the Wesco building, April? January. And part of our due diligence was to look at utility bills in the past. It had ran $500, $600. Our last one was almost $1,500. One of the problems with that building, the HVAC units are under capacity. From the moment we turn them on till we shut them off, they run. So there's no way we use 3 times the amount of electricity on this bill as the prior bill. It's just not possible. We switched all the lighting to LED. We've ran a load test on the service coming in with everything shut off. We have no shorts. So I'm dumbfounded how we could have tripled our electric use. And again, I'm sure you guys aren't electricians, HVAC techs, you don't have that answer. My next question is the meters. It appears most of the town didn't know we were getting new electric meters. There was probably an announcement in an electric bill or something. We don't look at that. The general population don't. I'm curious, is there an ROI on these meters? What's the advantage? Is that going to save us as consumers money? And can you guys explain to us a little bit about that?
Yeah,
Because that
take
would
Mark,
be
yep.
under your purview.
2 meters are being replaced at the same time. It is one of those that in our AMI project, the water meters are being replaced and the electric meters. As over time, these meters are not warranted. End of life comes for those. What we have done with this system is it's called a fixed read. The fixed read is there's not necessarily a meter reader involved. In other words, the meters now can be read at one station. So the reliance on going out and checking your meter, it can read, and this is where we see more accuracy and immediate answer to your meter instead of sending somebody out. So there will be more efficiency. We do see with water meters over time they become worn, so they do not show consumption accurately. but that's with every city that they replace meters and update. But this was been going on for long before my time,
Yeah, it's a long-
about 12 years. It is with the idea that, like I said, is we can give you, if you have a problem with your bill, we can give you an accurate read from inside City Hall and not have to go out and be relying on somebody reading a meter or misreading. We will always offer that, to double check, because things can happen.
Right.
But it is more of an efficiency, which will trickle down to as far as, holding electric costs.
Right. I understand about the water meters for sure. I know they wear, you do lose count on that.
On your electric, Eric, look and see what rate class you're in on those buildings, because it can vary from one building to the other.
Okay.
So in one rate class, $95 is the base fee, right? And so my buildings are on that as well. So it depends on what rate class you're in as to why that may be. There's a minimum charge there for different classes. So that may be why you're seeing that $95 versus the $19.50. I don't know. You can get with them and
'Cause
check that for sure.
We kind of cover the gamut. One of them is a single phase,
Right.
220 service.
Yep.
The other two are both three phase.
Three-phase.
One of them
Three-phase.
we had installed.
Yeah. Both mine are three
But
phase
both
as well.
three phase aren't
Yep.
the same price. One's
Right.
19, one's 95.
Right.
Has there been have you guys found anything going on with the electric? Because we've been watching the commission meetings online,
Mhm.
and the answer fortunately, we can pay our electric bill.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of people that can't pay a triple electric bill,
Mm-hmm.
and the solution being given is you can make payments.
Right. Now, how far back did you go on that building for the $500 to $600 bills?
Well, we've been
5 years. I was going to say,
Okay.
because that building's set without a lot of activity in it for quite a while.
Wow.
We
Yeah.
looked at when Harold and Karen had it open.
Right.
We're not talking about the COVID year.
Yeah.
No.
We're talking about when
Yeah.
meters had
Right.
operational.
Mm-hmm.
I will say there has been changes, and there's more changes into the customer service department. We did have, in which we're aware of, that we'll just say messages that were being left were not returned. We are straightening that out. You as a consumer, I'm calling in, and if I can't talk to somebody, I'm at least leaving a message, and then you never get a call back.
Right.
So that is one of the situations we are remedying. We've made some changes, and the other is we do, through this whole process, we have a primary meter reader, and then we've had, there's two on, but it is one of those in a normal situation, there's 2 meter readers that make this work through each month. The thing is we have other departments, because we know there's 4 other individuals that pick up this one person's, but we do have a primary reader. So there's 2 people out there reading, but it is one of those that we have seen is where what I call is a non-read. It is one of those, we want to follow up on those, because basically what the system says is you're saying you can't read the meter, and it sits there and goes, so do your best guesstimate on what that reading should be. It is when you go back, and that should, and we, in our ordinance in this, we should never, I guess you want to say, non-read a meter over 2 times. So that's
Right.
2 months.
Right.
So we are going through that. It is a change in the department, and I think a lot of customers are starting to, and then they've started receiving calls from that. We've had our city clerk making phone calls, and then the department. We have made a management change as part of the solution, and our hope is to get on track. And so what you have tonight is something that we have seen where somebody is making aware of a situation. So we'll look into your address, and Allison's writing it down, because it very well be something has happened. So
And I guess my concern is it's bigger than that.
Right.
It's not the customer service side of it. That was a result of something that happened. The something that happened was We changed a load of electric meters in this town, and the next billing cycle, y'all were overran with people with electric problems. I mean, what changed? That's how you have to find the root cause of this. What
Okay.
changed? We put electric meters in.
So it's not the meters. I'll tell you that right up front. It's not the meters, right?
So-
Yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah.
are we
Can I-
finding some errant readings up
Can
to
I-
the time we installed new meters?
What you're seeing is.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
I noticed you have your bills with you. May I see, or do you have a problem with seeing a bill?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Welcome to see it.
I just want to see.
This is the bill that is the item of concern. The other three, we know the.
Okay, look here. There's an E by there, and whenever you see an E, that means it was estimated. It was not actually
So
read.
this bill is estimated.
That's correct.
This bill was estimated.
Yep.
Yes, so
It was-
if it was overestimated, then you will see that reduction on your next
Okay.
bill, okay?
Are we seeing?
And that happens because we have gone through this before, a low on staff, but that's what the E,
This
that's what
happened
the E
about
means.
Right.
10 years ago, from my
Yep.
understanding, about 10 years ago. So,
I hope we find that widespread.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Yep.
yes.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you, Eric.
Thank you that is a hot topic.
But you might
and
check
we're
on your,
working on it. But thank you.
Check on your rate schedules and see what buildings are at
check
what
on
rate.
those.
Because there is a base charge on some of those rates, and that
There
may be
is.
why you're seeing that. There is no charge for the meter,
No,
so, yeah.
For the SWAT.
No,
no,
there's no
there's
charge.
no
for
charge
that.
for the
No.
swap.
$95.
Well,
That's
your
the base
cus-
charge for that rate schedule, if it's
Right.
on that rate schedule. So check and see which rate schedule those are on.
Right.
But we'll look into it.
Yeah.
We'll look into it.
You have to do that,
Yes, Jim?
okay.
Mayor, Commissioners, Jim Faulkner, 1014 West 3rd. May I offer a observation? It would appear that there's some kind of a systemic issue since you were completely, there was a tsunami of citizens coming in complaining about the huge increase in their electric bills. It would appear that there's two possibilities. And you just hit on a third, the possibility that it was estimated. One, the old meters had deteriorated to the point that they were not accurately reporting the true electric consumption. So when the new meters were installed, all of a sudden they are reporting the new level of consumption. Or the new meters are collectively flawed. There's some problem with them, or the software that's looking at it. Obviously, there's some kind of a systemic issue. Otherwise, you wouldn't have had all these people up here complaining about it. So I think we deserve an answer on that, and the answer is not, well, you can make payments. Electric department needs to provide a definitive solution for this problem. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else?
Chris Freund, 127 West 9th. Just wanted actually to come up and say thank you for the do not enter sign that's over by the Browns
Okay,
building.
yep.
It looks like it's actually working, which is very cool. We haven't seen as many. There's still a few, but of course there's always going to be a few.
Oh, yeah.
But just wanted to say thank you for that. Also interesting about the timing and how everything has come down as far as the awnings. And
It's-
it's very quick and very efficient.
It's been quicker than we thought.
Yes. We've
And,
actually had
and
some.
knowing that you need access, they are supposed to shut down.
Sure.
And then, of course, you can have access to
We'll make sure
residents.
and stay out of the way tomorrow because it looks like they'll be done tomorrow. So
That is the.
No, they're not
proposal.
they're not working tomorrow, from what I understand. They're gonna come back Thursday, and yeah.
Thursday, okay.
And
Yeah.
It'll be
that
this
will
week, yeah.
wrap it up until November.
Their crane has
And
another
so-
job to do tomorrow, so they're not gonna be able to be
Well, that was
down
a
there tomorrow.
fast-working,
So, yeah.
hard-working crane,
Yeah,
let's just
yeah,
say
yeah, yeah.
We'll make sure the dog is walked very well.
There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, anybody else? Okay, we will now move on to our special public hearings, special presentations or proclamations. First, under that, we have this evening, we have Kyle Spielbush, and he is a CPA with Jared, Gilmore, and Phillips. And he will be making a presentation on the City of Coffeyville audit report for fiscal year 2022. So welcome again, Kyle.
Yes.
Good to have you back.
As you've been through this before, we've got the
Yes.
letters at the front. We'll just dive right into the report. Starting on page 1, and a few reports in the back of this, is the only thing that actually belongs to us as auditors. Everything else in here is the city's information, city's numbers, and we just take it and put it in the prescribed format for KMAG. The first paragraph there on page 1 is what we audited, which is the fund summary statement of regulatory basis receipts, expenditures, and unencumbered cash balances for the city for the year ended December 31st, 2022. Next paragraph talks about an adverse opinion on U.S. GAAP financials. Since the city elects to follow the KMAG, the Kansas Municipal Audit and Accounting Guide, which is mainly a cash basis of accounting, we have to issue an adverse opinion on GAAP financials because you'd have material differences for things such as receivables, liabilities, prepaids, etc. With KMAG, you just simply have cash and accounts payable on your financial statement. Third paragraph, always that most important one in this report, and that's that unmodified opinion on regulatory basis of accounting. We believe that the numbers presented herein are a material, accurate representation of what happened during the year for the city, and we issued that unmodified opinion, kind of slang term, clean opinion, the best opinion the city can receive on their financial statement. Those next two paragraphs kind of touch a little bit more on that adverse and unmodified opinion. And then we get into management's responsibilities, our responsibilities as auditors, and then we talk about some supplementary information required by KMAG as well as required by some of your bond covenants. Some various schedules at the back of this. Talks about how we put last year's information in here too, just to give you kind of comparative purposes, what happened one year to the next. And then also finally there at the very bottom of page 3, we have that additional paragraph, other reporting required by government auditing standards. Since the city received and spent over $750,000 in federal grant money during the year, the city had to have what they call the single audit, which is some additional testing on those grant dollars, which requires a few extra reports at the back of this. You can choose to put those separately. We just choose to put it all together just for ease of access and having it all right there together. Turn over to page 4 and 5. This is kind of the meat and potatoes of the audit per se. This is statement 1. Lists all the various funds that the city holds, our beginning unencumbered cash balances or cash carryover for budget purposes. You've got your receipts, that money coming in the door, and then expenditures, money going out the door to get to that ending unencumbered cash balance. Since it's a KMAG audit and the city is a Kansas municipality, there's about a 10-page checklist of some various statutes and regulations the city has to adhere to. One of those is that each fund ends in a positive cash balance. So as you glance through that ending unencumbered cash balance column, you can see the city met that requirement. That next column are those accounts payable, that kind of special caveat of KMAG that kind of takes it from cash basis to more of a modified cash basis. Those are those bills that we're going to pay in January and February for those services attributable back in 2022, just to get those expenditures in the right period for budget purposes. Then finally, that far right column is our ending cash and bank balance, which you can see down at the bottom of page 5, ties to our amounts split out by the various funds, the accounts held by the city. One of the things I always like to point out there on the bottom of page 5 is that agency funds, those are funds that the city holds, but they don't necessarily belong to the city. We'll see an additional schedule at the back of this, things like fire insurance proceeds, things like that. So we subtract those out of the city's balance to get to the true cash balance of the city. Turn over to page 6. Now we get to the footnotes, kind of the words behind the numbers. Footnote number 1, pretty cookie cutter, really doesn't change much year in, year out. Don't spend a lot of time on it, but I do want to highlight one change that is in here. At the very top of page 9, that first paragraph, this is just the new revenue neutral rate information that we have to disclose since 22 was that first budget period using that, where we just disclosed that there was a revenue neutral rate for 2022. Outside of that, the other information just talks about Kansas statutes, budget law, as well as kind of the makeup of the city. Footnote number 2 relates to that 10-page checklist that I referenced earlier. There at the bottom of page 9, those 2 sentences just talk about that positive cash balance, as well as mentioning that we were under budget in all of our funds, which we'll see additional schedule at the back of this as well. If you turn the page 10 and 11, we have a few bond covenants to meet. One of those is that we have certain reserve accounts held. We're required to have a certain amount based on kind of those principal and interest maturing, etc. You can see we met that requirement by quite a bit. The reserve was just required was a little under $4 million, and the actual amount was about 13.6. So there's more than met that requirement. In addition, on page 11, we are supposed to produce enough electricity revenue to cover that next year's payment. More specifically, 125% of those next year requirement for principal and interest. You can see that the net income for the city was a little over $7.8 million, which was 188%. So we more than met that requirement. Footnote number 3, deposits and investments, kind of the cash. The first part there talks about our investments, where we just list out the various investments held by the city, money market, federal agency, and then our Kansas investment pool. And then it just goes into more detail about some statutes and regulations, things like limiting where the city can have their money, talking about how the money's got to be in the banks in which the county and the city operates, or surrounding counties, as well as making sure that our funds are secured at year end. Over there on page 12, that second paragraph gets into kind of the pure cash, not necessarily the investments, where we disclose the carrying amount of deposits of a little over $44 million, and then the bank balance was a little over $45 million, and that difference is just due to outstanding checks that hadn't cleared at the end of the year. Of that amount, $500,000 is covered by FDIC insurance coverage, and then the remaining amount was covered with pledged securities, meeting that requirement to be secured at year end. Footnote number 4, this used to be called capital lease. Some new regulations came out that kind of got rid of capital lease verbiage, and now they're all called finance leases. So in theory, nothing else changed. They just changed the name. So it's the same thing that you're used to looking at, and this one's just about the fire check payments that were referenced earlier. Here we just disclose kind of what those future payments are, and then any imputed interest, we subtract that out to get kind of that net present value, or kind of our principal amount that you owe. And then we just subtract out the current maturities to give you that long-term amount. You turn over to pages 13 through 15. It's got that same information in here, as well as the other debt instruments held by the city. We've got just the table there that lists them all out. You've got the beginning balances, any additions, reductions, payments, your balance at year end, and then your interest paid. And then pages 14 and 15. Always like to reference these. That's those future payments for all the debt instruments. Really good budgeting tool to have in your back pocket, just so you kind of know, hey, we've got a lot of payments coming next year or future years. Kind of get it in the back of your mind. We need to start saving to make those payments. Turn over to page 16. We have an additional paragraph there in reference to long-term debt. Just talked about some bonds that the city defeased a few years back. We just disclosed what that amount is of $38.3 million is still out there, but it's essentially been defeased by the city with other bond issues. Footnote number 6, this is kind of in response to that change in name of that capital lease as well. They did away with the words operating lease, so now we just call these right-to-use contracts. Essentially any kind of contracts where we're renting equipment, but we're never going to actually own it by the time we finish paying for it. And we just disclose how much we spent as a city during the year of a little over $6,700, and then it lists out those future payments that we've agreed into as well. Footnote number 7 relates to our industrial revenue bonds, and here we just disclose what that balance is. These are bonds that the city gave out. They're not, city doesn't owe them. The people pay the city that in turns make the payments for them, and we just disclose what that balance is of a little over $5.3 million. Footnote number 8, defined benefit pension plan, or that CAPERS footnote we always talk about each year. First 2 paragraphs there on page 16, cookie cutter information once again. Over there on page 17, actually get into information pertaining to the city. Here we just disclose that for CAPERS we remitted a little over $536,000 on behalf of our employees, and then KP&F a little over $616,000. Then that next paragraph, that net pension liability, always that scariest one in here, that amount the city would owe if the state were ever quit funding CAPERS or KP&F. Obviously we don't ever foresee that happening, but since it's an underfunded plan, we're just required to disclose that amount. And you'll see it's fairly large. For CAPERS it was a little over $5.6 million, and then KP&F a little over $6.2 million. I do like to point out on that number number actually did jump up quite a bit compared to the prior year. Probably a lot of it's tied to the stock market and the performance of their returns, just leading to a higher obligation as they weren't making as much. Footnote number 9, other long-term obligations, mainly focused on the city's vacation, kind of our accrued leave that carries over that our employees earn but they don't use. Here we're just required to calculate kind of what that dollar amount is of those hours that carry over from 22 to 23. They're on page 18 under that numbered list at the top. We calculate those amounts for vacation, a little over $802,000. For compensatory time, and then $64,000 for the $802,000 for vacation, $64,000 for compensatory time. There you go. Just simply taking those hours that carry over times their rate of pay at the end of the year. Footnote number 10, capital projects. Here we just disclose kind of the city's big projects that are going on currently at the time. We list those out, the authorized amount, whether that's through bond issues, grants, or simply just amounts that the city's chosen to set aside for those projects. And then we disclose the total amount spent through the end of the year, and then our estimated completion date, or if it was completed in the current year. Footnote number 11, loans receivable. These are those community and economic development loans that the city's given out. Here we just list those balances at the end of the year receivable to the city. Economic development of $46,000, community development of a little over $2,700, and then public housing loans a little over $139,000. Footnote number 12, economic dependency. You see this in here every year, just simply stating that a little over 67% of the electric utility revenues come from one producer. So, we're highly dependent on them to kind of fund our electric, essentially, because they're our biggest user. So that's where most of our revenue comes from. Footnote number 13, risk management. Cookie cutter, once again, essentially says that the city mitigates its risk of loss through the purchase of insurance. Footnote number 14 is commitments and contingencies, just an agreement that we have with the Grand River Dam Authority for electrical services through June 1st, 2042. Footnote number 15, interfund transfers. Biggest thing to take away from this is that statutory authority column, essentially saying that all of our transfers between funds had authority to be made during the year. And finally, footnote number 16, subsequent events, anything major that happened from the end of the year to when we issued the audit, of which we didn't have anything to disclose. Now we get to that supplementary information. Schedule 1 is that budgetary comparison schedule. Here we list out all those various budgeted funds of the city, our total certified budget, and then our adjustments for qualifying budget credits. These are things like reimbursed expenses, loan proceeds, grant proceeds, essentially items that we're going to spend money on, but the city doesn't necessarily have to produce funding for because we know it's coming from an outside source. So they call those budget extenders, actually lets us spend a little more in our budget. Add those two columns to get to our total budget, which we compare to our expenditures for each fund. And then that far right column, always the most important one. The one time a negative number is a good thing, means we were under budget into all of our funds. Turn over to page 23, all the way back to page 68, our individual fund summary statement schedules. We won't go through these or we would be here till tomorrow probably. But here it just goes into more detail in each of those funds, kind of where our money comes from, where our money goes, taxes, charges for services, etc., as well as expenditures. You've got 4 major categories for KMAG: personal services, kind of our wages and fringe benefits; contractual services, any other services the city procures; commodities, anything you're buying that you can tangibly touch; and kind of capital outlay, those big one-time expenditures. And here's where we actually put that prior year information and current year information. Then we've got our budget by line item and our variance over under by line item. So once again, really good information to review on your downtime, just to kind of see those trends of what's happened. I always like to mention as well that when you look across there, you'll see big swings in those line items, those variance budget to actual. You're bound in total by fund, not by individual line item. So that's kind of the biggest thing you're looking at, but you will see big swings in there. All the way back on page 69, those are those agency funds that I referenced earlier. Here we just list out those various agency funds of the city, the beginning balance, and then just kind of the activity, receipts, and disbursements to get to that ending cash balance back there on statement 1. Page 70 is schedule 4, kind of another one of those bond covenants we've got to put in our audit, just proof that the electric department had insurance coverage during the year, as well as disclose the total number of users. Now if you turn over to page 71, this is where we get to that single audit portion of the packet here. Pages 71 and 72 is what they call the Schedule of Expenditures of Federal Awards. Essentially, we break out all the various grants received by the city based on the various departments of the government they come from. And then we also disclose kind of where they were passed through, whether it's Department of Commerce or whether it's a direct grant. The pass-through identifying number, that's just a number that, like, the Department of Commerce, for example, uses just so they can specify, okay, these funds were for City of Coffeyville's grant for this purpose. That federal CFDA number is a 5-digit number that the federal government assigns to each grant just to keep them all separate as well. Then the next column is provided to subrecipients. This is any grant dollars that the city receives that then passes on to someone else. You've got receipts, that money, the grant dollars coming in, and then our expenditures, grant dollars going out the door. You can see down there at the bottom of page 72, we are almost double that requirement of $750,000, as almost $1.5 million in federal grant money was spent. Now with the single audit, we have to select so much dollar coverage of grants to test. Those two grants were the two at the very top, the biggest ones that the city had during the year. That CDBG money for the sidewalk project, and then our airport improvement program grant as well. Those tests included looking at the reports, making sure we had support for those numbers, as well as looking at the expenditures, making sure those were allowable. So we looked at invoices, made sure they were for what they said they were going to be for. If you turn over to page 73 and 74, this report, I don't spend a lot of time on it because we don't actually issue an opinion in this report. It's more focused on our internal control over financial reporting. If there's any issues with things such as bank reconciliations or payroll reports not tying out, things like that, this is where they'd be disclosed. We didn't have any of those to disclose, so I don't spend a lot of time on it, but I encourage you to read through there just to kind of see those various things. Pages 75 through 77. This is the report on those major programs, those grant dollars we tested. It's set up in the same format as that first report we looked at back on page 1, where essentially we talked about what we audit, and then we issue our opinion, which we believe that the city complied based on our testing with all material aspects of the compliance supplement, the requirements for those grants. Then it just goes into that same format of management's responsibility, auditor responsibility, etc. Turn over to page 78. You'll tell me I should have just skipped the past 5 pages. We should have just gone straight here. The government, they like just a quick synopsis of, hey, this is the information we need to know. This is where we want it. So it just goes through that same stuff. Talks about the audit report, adverse opinion on GAAP, unmodified opinion on regulatory basis of accounting, internal control over financial reporting, no issues. Federal awards, no issues. The auditor's opinion on our major programs, unmodified. Any audit findings, we identify those major programs we tested once again. The threshold for whether it was a type A or type B program of 750, and then the auditee qualified as low risk, and then financial statement findings and federal award findings, of which there are none. I always like to point out on this page that auditee qualified as a low risk auditee, that'll always be marked no for a city that elects to follow KMAG, because one of the requirements to meet a low risk auditee is that you have to follow GAAP or a state required basis of accounting. KMAG's optional, so it'll always be no. All it changes is just the percentage of grant dollars from 40% to 20% what we test. So really nothing as far as red flags or issues for the city when you look at that. And then 79 is just the prior audit findings, of which there were none. Now we'll go back to that packet of letters, and we'll highlight those real quick and wrap this up. First 2 pages, those are what they call the presentation letter. In the past, if we had issues with management in getting the information we needed or disagreements with them, things like that, in completing the audit, we could just disclose those orally. Now we're just required to put them in writing. We didn't have any issues when it came to getting the information we needed or getting things done. So I encourage you to read through there, but there's really nothing major to point out. It's kind of our boilerplate letter. Third page in there, those are accounts, or our audit adjustments, excuse me. One audit adjustment, that's exemplary. We have some cities that this takes up 4 or 5 pages of adjustments that we've got to make. So for just one minor audit adjustments is exemplary for a city. Finally, those last few pages is what they call the management representation letter. Each one of those numbered points we should have talked about at some point with management or a member of the commission throughout the audit. So it's really good. We call it the reminder letter essentially, because you should reread that each year, kind of put those things in the back of your mind. Hey, this happened during the year. We need to make sure to tell our auditor about it next year come audit time. So that being said, we have any kind of questions or comments?
I don't. Just very good. Very
Thank
good,
you.
thorough.
Thank you.
Puts everything out there. Very good.
Okay.
Yes.
Appreciate it.
Everybody have a good
Okay.
evening.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
I will say, Commission, want to thank city staff for 2022. It is one of those that we feel the audit next year for 2023 will be the same. It is one of those that staff has done a tremendous in holding the line, watching expenses, and the city sits now, Standard & Poor, A+ stable. So that has changed for the positive on the Standard & Poor rating, but it is one of those, the financial situation of the city continues to improve to service the Coffeyville citizens. And it's not that we've received more money, we've just been very wise in how we use it. So I thank all of staff.
Thank you. Yes, very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on, we will now,
If I may, just a one quick question. One thing kind of caught me as he was going along. He mentioned a $5 million deficit in the Capers Fund. Is that?
that's not a deficit.
It's saying if Capers was ended by the state, that's the city's liability.
Yeah.
That would be
It's
our
not a deficit.
Yeah.
that would be our liability. So
Yeah.
it's sort of like the national debt, and we really don't need to worry about it.
Well, of
Well,
course you need
it
to worry
was-
about
Be
it, but
prepared.
yeah.
It was-
You always need to worry about it,
Right.
but it's not a deficit.
It was water, it was a result of the recession of 2008 and 9, where so many pensions were unfunded. So the federal government came in and said, we want the cities to know that what their debt obligation should Capers fail. And that's KPNF also. So it is something that goes on and is shown, and it is truly a liability, should have something in there, but it's more of a requirement of the federal government that Capers make cities aware of that financial obligation should they cease to be.
So it's, if I could make a comparison, it's sort of like depreciation on the books. It's not a real number that we need to be concerned about, but it's would be if.
In fact, that would be close to the right. It
Okay.
is something that has to be shown as a requirement of the federal government, but to sit there and say we expect to spend that, no, we don't.
All right, thank you.
Okay, next we have a presentation of Community Development Block Grant Trail Project Award. Here to make this presentation is Director of Engineering Services, Mr. Thomas Oswald.
And I'll beat Thomas to that if the commission will come down front for a picture. We do. This this was presented by the state to the city of Coffeyville, and Thomas will explain. We got a big check everybody can have a finger on, and that stuff. So.
Behind the big check.
Yeah, hide behind the big chair.
And Thomas first tell you what you're doing. You got to scrunch.
Yeah, act like you like each other.
Yeah, there. Yeah.
Come on in.
Okay. Thomas, just give a quick, this is what this is for.
So this is supports it's for the trail project that takes us from the north, where it currently ends, north of First Street, about 200 some odd feet north of First Street. It takes us all the way to the fair park. So we will have a trail all the way there, and that trail with the CDBG grant project actually goes all the way to 11th Street, just behind the grocery store area. So, and we have sidewalks that take you straight to the grocery store area as well as some of the other shopping, and it will actually get you all the way to downtown on ADA compliant sidewalks.
So the trail to know where
Trying to go somewhere, yeah.
Okay, moving on, we have our half-cent transportation sales tax presentation. Our city manager, Mark Hall, will make this.
Mayor and Commissioners, I believe it's on there. Due to the dignitaries and people that have come tonight, I will speed through this. I will do this again, but it is one of those, just to get on with the meeting. What you have before you, this is the half-cent sales tax. It is one of those, I've provided information. This is the ballot question that you see before you, but it does contain, and what an understanding is, due to election requirements through the Department of Commerce, this had a different, as far as than usual, sunset date. This had a date of December 31st, 2023. Normally, that what you will see is a sunset date that is September 30th. What that means is that if approved by voters, this is currently a sales tax for, primary is for the highway, both highways. But it is one of those that if approved by voters, and this happened in Dodge City this prior year, it is one of those that if approved by voters, it will actually sunset on December 31st. So it'll restart, if approved, on April 1st, which is usually quite odd.
Yeah.
And it is, we want to be forthcoming. It is one of those to say, is it a new tax? Well, anytime something ends and then starts again, you've got to say, well, yes. But this is for that brief time between December 31st and April 1st, the sales tax will not be at the register. It will not be at the register. And then it will start again if approved by voters. So I just want to explain that because that is a little different. We'll hum through these. What will the sales tax, its primary use will be focused, the half-cent sales tax on Highway 166 and 169. That is the primary. It is one of those, and let me go back to that, I might mention is both of those highways are funded by KDOT. It is one of those, the KDOT usually has an 80-20, the city the 20, the state 80, and sometimes that's 90%. It is one of those that should this not pass, those tax dollars, the city will still have to come up with those tax dollars. This is, the sales tax is a source that would actually sit there and replace the property taxpayers portion with the sales tax portion. So it does save property taxpayers dollars. Why are street and a sales tax? Like we said, is instead of property taxpayers have to pay for that portion or match, it is one of those that the sales tax is what this is used for. We get the improvements, and what is nice, 33% of those that live outside of Coffeyville contribute to the sales tax by passing through town or coming in to shop at Walmart or these things. They're not living here inside the city limits, so they're contributing a third of the sales tax that's needed to pay for these projects. Then you have what benefits sales tax is renewed. It just outlines that, the streets will be, improved. Property owners are relieved. It is one of those a responsibility, but there is one thing different in this is because those are state highways, the city does get some revenue off those. Should those start to fail, the state can require us to do those. And then it is to equal this, and you'll see on another slide, these are just some pictures of it failing. You can see the storm drains are collapsing in. You can see the replace and the cracking and the replacement, where in those some pictures you see cement or concrete to fill in. These are asphalt topping. It is one of those that what we propose in that there will be sidewalks. Those storm drains will get replaced. And then to seal that, the guttering, which you can see in some of these pictures, there is no curb and gutter. If anybody's driven down 166 or 169, we have places where there is no curb and gutter. It's just broken off over the years. So this is part of a project. It is one of those. Do we have a plan? Yes, we do. Of course, I included 2023, but as we move through 2024 to 2034, those are the projects of 166 and 169. So there is, instead of saying, well, we hope to do things, these are based on a budget that we move through and get 169 and 166 taken care of over the 10 years. We do have roughly about 25 miles, lane miles, and I say lane, there's, sometimes 4 lanes,
Right.
but 25 miles of lane miles that the city is responsible for maintenance with the state. It is one of those, there are 3 options. One is status quo. That's why we do nothing. Eventually, it'll 166 and 169 will deteriorate, and then the Kansas Department of Transportation will force the city to repair the highways passing through Coffeyville. So one way or the other, we would have to pay. So you look at property tax. Property tax and what is estimated that is taken in by the half-cent sales tax, and a third of it is paid by people that don't even live here, so why wouldn't we want to take advantage of that? It is equivalent to 14 mills. So in the grand scheme of things, that if we did the status quo, eventually that would lead to increasing property taxes by 14 mills. So roughly on excuse me, on a $100,000 home, that's $11.50 times 14, and that's your annual, what your increase would be. So it's quite significant, and like I say, we've been holding the mill levy, but that is the alternative. Of course, you have a sales tax, and Kansas is a property tax driven state. That is something that goes back to Brownback tried to change. He wanted us to go, Oklahoma is a sales tax driven state. So it is one of those that the cities are limited to 3 cents per dollar, whereas Oklahoma cities are usually around an 8.5% of sales tax. Sales tax is a fair tax. Everybody, the more you buy, the more you can afford. It is one of those, you pay taxes on those goods, and it is one of those, what is the sales tax collected can only be used in Coffeyville. It can't be used on anything else. It's only Coffeyville. We can't put it in, and that's why on the vote, it has to be for its intended use. So it's good, and I think you're seeing is a plan for the future that tells the public, You will see these things happening each year as we move through in getting this done. The next is does a half-cent sales tax affect property taxes? No, it does not. This is a separate tax. It does relieve property tax payers from, which would be the alternative of putting the mill levy, which increases their property taxes. So no, it does not affect your property taxes. Who pays? And that's just another summary that 33% out of a dollar, the 33 cents that we need to pay for this road improvements is people that don't even live here. So why not, as they pass through, is sit there and say, help us to make these improvements to our city. And that goes for any sales tax, and as you're aware, the parks. A third of the parks improvements, which I think has caught on to people, they don't even live here. And they're welcome to use our parks. But it is one of those they're helping us make it. How long is this? It is for 10 years. The city is, and this is to sit there and say, this is not a 25-year, this is not a 20-year or whatever. It is saying that, yes, after a 10-year period, we want to hear your voice again. There is certain things that you can make a sales tax, and it's broken up in portions, but you can use certain pennies out of a dollar to sit there and go, this is a never-ending sales tax. Once approved, it never stops. I like the 10 years simply is you always want to give the public a say. And that keeps cities as good stewards of the money. So it is one of those. In closing, it is, does the city have a plan and a budget? Yes, we do. Everyone can see the half-cent sales tax work on Highway 166 and 169. The sales tax collected stays in Coffeyville. The sales tax collected for general transportation improvements, but not limited to, that is the only purpose it can be used for. Passage of the sales tax will provide property tax relief, because at some point we are going to have to pay for our portion of these improvements, and you're talking an equal to 14 mills added to. And if somebody would like to see, there is a formula, but the easy way is on a $100,000 house, you would take assessed value, you would take 14 times 1150, and that would be your annual, and you can divide that by 12, the annual of how much you would pay for 14 mills increase. It is remember, 1/3 of the highway improvements, and I say, are from paid by people that live out of town. So hope I zip through this, and if you have any questions, I'll probably catch it next meeting, because I know some people are waiting on the next agenda.
So will this information be posted out for people to
Yes,
look at?
it is, and you will hear it on KGGF radio. You will hear it also, see it on our government channels, and there will be brochures. You will see it in the Journal. There'll be brochures distributed explaining what I just stated.
Thomas, you may not have this figure, but so we're getting ready to start a project on 169, correct? It was 1.6 million, if I remember correctly, roughly.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, and so the city has 20% of that cost, correct?
That was actually a 90/10.
Is it? Okay.
So we have just under 600,000.
Right. So that's how many mills? Yeah,
And that just for
about 10. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
1,000 feet.
Yeah,
yeah, exactly. So,
that's
yeah.
all that is.
So that would
Roughly
be
a mill
roughly
is
about 10
equivalent
mills
to
if you
about-
had to do that through property taxes.
We use a round figure of mills equivalent to 55,000. So you can divide that in, and it'll tell you how many mills that you would need to increase.
Thank you, Thomas.
Okay, all right, thank you, Mark, for that, and we look forward to seeing those posts and have everybody, our citizens, take a look at that and see what the plan is and see how important that 0.5% is. Okay, we will now move on to old business. First of all, we will have a second reading of ordinance number S-23-02, which is an ordinance to allow alcohol to be served at the Perkins Building during the Visit Coffeyville Haunted History Tour event. If you remember, we had the first reading of this at our last meeting, so this will be the second.
Mayor, if there are no questions, I'll move to approve the second reading of ordinance S-23-02 as presented.
Second.
Motion is made by Vice Mayor York, seconded by Commissioner Maples.
Nope, Jones.
Jones.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sorry,
Yeah.
Jones. Thank you for
Yes.
correcting me. I appreciate that. So motion is made by Vice Mayor York and seconded by Commissioner Jones.
Thank you.
Commissioner Swindell.
Nay.
Vice Mayor York.
Aye.
Commissioner Maples.
Aye.
Mayor Van Oster.
Aye.
Commissioner Jones.
Aye.
Okay, we have another reading, which is the second reading of ordinance number G-23-04, which is an ordinance amending Chapter 2, Article 3, Division 1, Section 2-50 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Coffeyville, Kansas, and replacing any conflicting ordinances or parts thereof. Once again, we had this at our last meeting as the first reading.
And I might mention that
Okay,
is
go
our
ahead.
residency.
Residential ones, right.
Residency
That was a
change, basically,
racism.
other changes, but in a simple way
Right.
is from 25 mile semicircle to 45.
That's
Right.
Yep.
Okay. If there's no further questions, I will move to approve the second reading of ordinance G-23-04 as presented.
I'll second.
Motion is made by Mayor Van Oster and seconded by Commissioner Maples to approve the change to ordinance G-23-04 as presented. Vice Mayor York.
Aye.
Commissioner Maples.
Aye.
Mayor Van Oster.
Aye.
Commissioner Swindell.
Aye.
Commissioner Jones.
Aye.
All right, we will now move on to new business. First item is we will have discussion and action of a notice to proceed with the City of Caney Water Project. Mark Hall, our city manager, will make comments on this item.
Mayor and Commissioners, we have a lot of individuals, of course, representation from Caney, and then we also have representation from the state. It is one of those that Caney is seeking a solution to their water situation. I want to is they're looking is for the city to proceed. I know this is the first time you're hearing what the project about. I want to assure you that it is one of those in just a timeline that it has been mentioned that this, could all said and done in construction that might not be completed until 2027. So it's not tomorrow water suddenly flows. This is a process. It is one of those they would like, and that's what the request to proceed in good faith that, we're going down to this road. There'll be agreements, there'll be things that need to be done before, like I said, anybody spends any money. But on the city side, we are in this year is we have contracts that are with the state's water office that need to be addressed. So those are things that we have to do, but this is kind of giving you an idea what this project would look like, and in a hopes, and I think the commission, like we've always said, reaches out their hand to other cities in need in Kansas. It is one of those, it is saying is, as we continue on, we know these things, but are we good to make this possibly, this solution, actually a viable thing for the city of Caney? So I hope that gave some answers, and I guess whatever wants to start coming up and explaining about the project.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Mayor, Commissioners. What I'm about to say, I'm not advocating that we do not do this. But what I do want to do is just provide you with a little food for thought, because as you mentioned, it is a long-term project. Okay, first of all, the water treatment plant that we have here in Coffeyville was designed and built for a city of about 20,000 people. We are currently providing water, in addition to Coffeyville, we're providing water to South Coffeyville, Deering, and 5 rural water districts. So to add Caney into the system, do we have the capacity to do that? Yes, not an issue. In isolation, that's true, but that is determined by how much, where do we get the water to do that? It's coming out of the Verdigris River. Okay, now let's set that aside for a second and go upstream. Independence, they get to go to the well first, so to speak, because they're upstream. So they pull their water out, and they are getting ready to provide voluminous and lots of water to the Bartlett plant. So it was asked, and I don't remember if it was at a county commission or a independent city commission meeting, somebody said, well, what if we don't have enough water? Their answer was, don't worry about it, we've got a contract. We'll get the water we need from the Elk City Reservoir. Now, having said that, by definition, that means there's not enough water coming downstream to Coffeyville, potentially. So at that point, we have to say, don't worry about it. We've got a contract with Elk City Reservoir, so we'll get the water we need. So now let's add Caney in. So now we do have contract issues and water issues that you've alluded to. Okay?
Well, and I was going to say that we have an expert that might assist in explaining from the state's water office.
I'm hoping that's what we're going to get. Now, call this the good, the bad, and the ugly. First, it was good, we can do it. The bad is there's not enough water in the Verdigris. What about the ugly? Now, this is no pun intended, but downstream, several years away. The state of Kansas has already told us that the Ogallala aquifer within 50 years will be depleted 70%. And that's on record. Farmers from Nebraska to Texas have been drawing water out of that underground reservoir for years. At some point, those collective states are going to say, farmers, we're sorry, but we have to start rationing water to you for your fields out of that aquifer because we can't allow it to be completely sucked dry. So they will have to go to a secondary source, which is their local rivers, which will further exacerbate water problems for cities. So it's just, consider, everybody needs to be aware of the short-term, medium, and long-term effects of doing this. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying everybody, we need to take the blinders off, because water has and is becoming a more critical issue at the state legislature, and that volume has been ratcheting up for several years. So just be aware that the actions you take potentially has the effect of negatively impacting our little corner of the world in a few years. Thank you.
Nathan, can I ask you a favor? We have an expert, and it is one of those that I think can summarize and address the concerns is going forward, and it gives us time, I think he'll explain what's going on this year and what the city has to get done and then we can worry about things later. So I'll turn it over to you to explain water.
Sure. It's hard to know where to start. But the water office, so there's two main water agencies dealing with quantity of water in the state. And the Division of Water Resources, and they manage water rights. And that's Water Appropriation Act. You apply for the use, the water belongs to the people of the state of Kansas. And you apply for the right to utilize some of that water for beneficial purposes. I think it's good you noted sometimes, so the Verdigris Basin, it's the world of extremes.
It is.
You've all experienced that. 2019,
Yes.
2007, the high years. 2000, 2006, 2011, 2012, and now the last 12 months, we go through extremes. And I manage 15 Corps of Engineers reservoirs where the state has water supply contracts. We enter into water purchase contracts with cities like Coffeyville or Industry. The water supply in the reservoirs was included by the request of a request to the Corps of Engineers. There are flood projects, flood control projects, and in 1958 there was the Federal Water Supply Act, and it gave the opportunity, and I think City of Coffeyville was one of 4 cities that joined the state legislature in requesting that water supply be included in the reservoirs. It was a 1961 resolution of the Kansas legislature that said we're asking for water supply in these reservoirs, and we're also supporting City of Independence, believe it or not, City of Coffeyville, Emporia, and Council Grove to include water supply in their respective reservoirs. So I can't help, but give a little bit of background.
Yes, and I think
So-
that does. It does
Yeah.
help and understand.
So, if you look back in the papers in the 30s and 50s, there were many months at a time where there wasn't any flow in the Verdigris River. And I've operated through quite a few droughts in the last 20-some years. And there are times, in fact, the last couple weeks have been, there are no natural flows in the Verdigris River. It is 100% being supported by releases from Toronto, Fall River, and Elk City Reservoir. Toronto and Fall, more incidental, some foundational flow for the lower system, and our consumptive water supply demands are met from Elk City and for Independence, Coffeyville, and Coffeyville Resources. So there are times that, and this is the only system that I've worked in, or it's the most frequent at least, that we get down to the point where there's not enough natural flows for vested water rights, of which those 3 entities, including Coffeyville, have vested rights that have priority dates earlier than 1945. So you see the dry end extreme, there is not enough in the Verdigris River at times. But it's a percentage of time. Most of the time, there's more than enough to go around. And so that's, the wisdom of the leadership at Coffeyville and the legislature included water supply in the reservoirs. So to get through those tough times, we use the water supply storage. We monitor it closely. I know there's a lot of panic now, and if you get a foot down or 2 feet down, people, and it's from lack of inflow and some use, there's a lot of perception of we're running out of water. It's reservoir's almost empty, but from my years of operation, I'm quite pleased. This has been a severe 12 months. It ranks up there with, we model the entire period of record from 1950 to present. And it's the last 12 months is in the neighborhood of our drought of record that occurred in 1952 to 57. Or at least a couple years in there. If it continues on, we could be flirting with, being equivalent to our drought of record. But there are long periods of time where there are no natural flows in the system. So we have determined, modeling shows that we have sufficient storage for these cities, or for the demands in this lower system from Elk City Reservoir. Losing my train of thought, but
It's getting there, and it's
okay.
good. It's
Okay,
good.
but let's see. I was working my way toward. Oh, yes, the perception. So it's 5 feet down, but there's 60% of the storage remaining after 12 months of very severe drought, and so I feel encouraged and I feel pleased where we're at now. We have I'm not a meteorologist, but it looks like we have El Nino impacts to hopefully make some changes to the weather patterns over the next year, and I think it's a high probability Elk City will refill in the spring, if not a couple events over winter even, but we do have a sufficient supply to meet demands, and right now so we model through the drought of record conditions that were experienced in the 1950s, and we base the amount of water we commit, the amount of yield we commit from the reservoir, limited to that quantity that could be withdrawn from the reservoir during that drought of record. And we have not committed it all. We have contracts with CVR, Independence, and Coffeyville, and there's some remaining yield under that scenario running through the 1950s drought. So right now we are negotiating. Now at the end of the 40-year, we can do 10 to 40 years, even less than 10 if circumstances require. Contracts, water purchase contracts. There's the current Coffeyville contract expires, I think, December 16th of 2023, and we're negotiating renewal of that contract. That contract is currently for 300 million gallons, and current negotiations, we're looking at a 500 million gallon contract. So that 500 million gallons makes up for those periods of time when natural flows are insufficient for the water rights, the appropriation rights that the city has, invested rights. So
I think, and this might be helpful, and I know in our discussions is we will have water. It is to the degree of what we are going through in the drought, and we do things that, watch to warning, to emergency. Those are things is to conserve water. But to sit there and say that we would actually, Coffeyville will go without water, and we're going to have a local provider give us all bottled water to live off of, that shouldn't happen.
no, I would not anticipate that. We have a sufficient supply in Elk City Reservoir. I do encourage water users to implement some conservation measures. I don't think it needs to be to an extreme level. The state has its own process, or the Kansas Water Office, in managing the storage that's sitting in Elk City. We look at, how much have we committed, at what rate it's being utilized, how does this compare to the modeled scenario of the drought of record, okay? And right now, I had only issued from the remaining water supplies a water watch. That would be the issuance the state is declaring because it's prudent. During drought, it can't hurt if there's some less painful conservation measures, voluntary measures that can occur. Why not? Who knows what the future holds. To go into the warning for the state to unilaterally say, you need to implement warning or emergency, that is when we'd have some indication that the drought we're experiencing may be worse than what we've modeled, that drought of record. And I don't see indications of that yet. So, but the city going to warning, I applaud that. It's just, if we can conserve a little bit more and have a little bit more of a safety factor, that's good.
And I think that's what we discussed. In the watch and the warning, it's voluntary. Now, we know that the state, when we go to an emergency, then the state, everybody will issue that. So why not do more conservation, because it is voluntary.
Right.
So that's why going from watch to warning.
Well, we're trying to stay out of that emergency situation, so, yeah.
So, and then to the issue with Caney, I didn't know if you wanted me to address that, but just a little bit.
That'll give them an idea what
Yeah.
kind of what we're talking about.
So the city of Caney, looks like the estimates are maybe as high as 250,000 gallons a day, or 0.25 MGD. City of Coffeyville is running about 3.8 MGD. So it's not a huge increase. I would say, the additional quantity that you're requesting under your water marketing contract, according to our modeling, should cover that. Especially considering the city of Coffeyville hasn't been using quite the full water right quantity, which is about 1.5 billion gallons. But when we model, we've modeled the city using the full authorized water rights. And so with the addition of Caney, I believe that demand quantity is pretty close, pretty close to the authorized quantity.
Steve? Here, you've been. You can come up too in case Steve has questions.
Will Caney continue to draw water from the Little Caney River, and the water that comes from Coffeyville will be incremental in order to meet their needs, or will this be a complete switch and they will be drawing their water supply exclusively from Coffeyville?
Yeah, they're going to
Well, I
address
think
that.
they're going to
Let 'em
address
address
that. But this is just giving an
Give them a
idea.
chance.
This would only raise, right now, like he said, what we do is we produce approximately 3.8 million gallons a day. It would raise our draw on the river approximately 6.5% at max. But they're going to address their water loss, which is going to drop that amount down considerably also. So,
Okay.
but that is worst case scenario.
And that's
So-
approximately equivalent to your full water right authorization.
It is.
quantity.
It is. It would put us right at our. Right now, annually, we're using 1.4 or excuse me, 1.2 billion gallons.
I think it's 1.42.
billion,
Yeah,
right. And
right.
we have 1.5 billion in our vested water rights.
Yeah.
And we put us right at that point right there.
Okay.
By adding them. So we would still be good with our water rights.
Yeah.
And with our purchase contract, you know, if we wanted to add anybody big in the future, we would have to seek additional water rights.
Right.
In,
And so my point was mainly that, so we've already unwittingly, you know, I just think it's good practice, especially, you know, to put a little buffer in there, even though, you know, using a little bit less than authorized in our model, run the full quantity. And so it's as if we modeled the Caney demand within it already.
but you can see, and this is what explaining what tonight is there's a lot of moving pieces in this, and like say, first we have to address this is our future, and that will be done. And then, in the meantime, it does with a good faith, and that's what Caney will present, is with the idea that, you know, all said and done, you know, we're not going to spend any money, we're not going to go out and break ground, these things have to be worked out, but can we go down the road and continue engineering? Can we still seek, you know, be it, right-of-ways and these kind of things going down there, or does this stop here? And I think that's where, you know, all interest, we've got to still work this out with the state, and of course, we'll always help, but not at, you know, penalizing our own residents or users. So Nathan is just kind of giving an idea. There is water. It is just, you always have to do, and it's a new, I guess, they're scientific. I look at it is you do that little reasoning and you make a decision that for our future, we will probably be looking at the 500 million instead of the 300 million. And that's just good to protection. It does cost more, and that's the thing of it, but it also sits there and goes, if things should get worse, we're going to protect the citizens of Coffeyville. So I think if you have any more questions, he'd answer them, but it gave us an idea. There is water. I always look at it is where I came from, it was a bowl. We'll just say the river, and anybody that uses it sticks a straw in. And how many straws can be in that river before somebody doesn't get a drink? And like with the state, they're watching that, making sure that everybody, because you can't take water without them knowing it, is they're going to make sure everybody, and we with those senior rights, actually get preferential treatment. We actually get preferential treatment for that. They're going to make sure that we get a drink of water anytime we want to. So,
All right.
would that be fair to say?
Yes.
Working with you?
We work under the prior appropriation doctrine, and the vested water rights have, you know, first in time and first right to water. And then the water purchase contract, that's exclusive to, you know, the customers, whoever's signed up for a water purchase contract.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We won't hold you any longer.
Okay. Okay, then who do we have next, if you want to come on up?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you, Mayor and esteemed council commissioners, for having us. I'm Kelly Zellner, the city administrator for Caney, and our engineer from Midwest Engineering, Danny Coltrane. We did a preliminary or a pre-design report that's going to reveal some things that you may already know. And the drought for Caney's been a good thing to be able to see where their water situation is at, that I believe has been in denial for years. I'm not one of those kind of people, so when they brought me there, I'm one of the guys that points at the lump in the carpet. So nonetheless, we wanted to share some things with you. First off, in answer to some questions that may be in the room, there's no way immediately that we can abandon anything.
Right.
Sure.
In the city of Caney, we're still going to produce water, and that may be a long-term thing. I mean, I want to be totally honest with you because I feel like everybody deserves that. Caney is under violation for TTHMs. It's going to take them a year to come out of that. Talked to William Carr, and he says that one of the things that they would like to see is for Caney to eventually abandon the water plant because of the design of the plant itself was not made for the river. Mm-hmm. Well, having said that, there's a couple other things that we may even consider later on down the road because, like Mark had said, this is going to take time. This is not a quick fix, and very possibly we're going to be completely out of the drought and back in flowing water well by the time we can even connect, or if that's even a possibility. And thank you for considering us in that as we were even considering tonight. But there may be a possibility of mixing and blending and us still producing. So we have not come to a resolution. Now, I know what William's saying, and by then we may be out of the forest with the TTHMs by the time that we actually get down the road enough to even go to project phase with this. So Danny's going to share some things with you tonight that we found as we did look around, and it helped us. The drought helped us narrow things down to resources that were reliable, just like Nathan said. We had to do the same thing. We had to look at every option. Of course, that's what the state of Kansas wanted us to do. And then as we narrowed it down, and also some of the rural water sources, they don't have the infrastructure for Caney. Now, it's not a stretch of the imagination that Caney bypassed a lot of options. So now here they sit, and almost sadly, kind of like Mark and I've talked hat in hand, and we don't have a lot of options. So that's kind of why we're not on our prayer bones yet, but we could be, if that gets to a place. But anyway, I'm going to let Danny share some of the things. And I do also know that we have to get our water loss under control as well.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that we've looked at greatly. And I was kind of concerned that hadn't been brought up for years. Mm-hmm. As we started doing research in a lot of the records that had not been expressed. And the community was not aware of that amount of water loss, which obviously drives the cost of production up, as you well know, and then the fact that here they're paying for that and didn't know why that was impacting their water bill, kind of like people were talking the water bills and things tonight. So that's the other impact. The other thing that we found was that there were new water lines laid that were never tapped into, and the old ones shut down. And that's been our biggest issue right now, is repairing the third water line underneath the new water lines. So that's been another dilemma of our situation. Yeah, it is a wow. Yeah. And when people hear that, they're like, how did that happen? I'm like, I wasn't here. I don't know. I can say I'm sorry. I don't know. Maybe if that helps. But so we do have a lot of issues to work through. And like I said, I wanted to be totally honest with you. So we're not looking to burden the city of Coffeyville with a lot of this. That's what the other thing. As we get back out of the plant, we also know, because the plant was not designed for that river, it takes up 20% of that 47% loss. It flushes and flushes and flushes and flushes those. It's not on medias, it's actually on filter tubes. Right. And it just wasn't designed for that. So having said all of that, we know that it's one of the things. So we're going into this slowly and carefully as well. So Danny, you want to come on up and start sharing some of the things you found?
Thank you. The guys have shared quite a bit of information with you already. I'll give you an engineer's perspective. So not much fluff, just numbers, but there that sort of personality. So you guys have a letter that I've written on behalf of Caney. Very simple. They're asking to be considered for wholesale water in the near future. In visiting with your staff, there's a connection point that's readily available. There's an ordinance that's written in such a way that those agreements on cost can be tied to specific ordinances that are already in existence. So the big questions come for you guys that you guys have already initiated conversations on is, do you have the water rights? How does that fit into your water plan? So with Caney, they're a community of under 1,800. They can actually go apply to lenders of last resort, such as USDA, SRF. So when we go through those processes, we write a preliminary engineering report, which is a comprehensive study of their water supply, their storage, their distribution, and their production. And so we compare each one of those alternatives, say, hey, where is the best value? Because I can say, hey, I can buy water here cheaper, or it's only 5 miles to this source of water. We take each one of those, come up with a present worth analysis, say, hey, this is the best value. Because when we go to those lenders of last resort, we're competing at a state and national level for those funds. So my firm, we've been very successful in Southeast Kansas bringing those loan and grant dollars to the smaller communities. So that's my world. We live in it, so we've learned to manage that very carefully. So all the due diligence that we've went through, Coffeyville is the cheapest option. Our first priority is to do a supply line to take the plant offline. It comes with a total, I mean, we're looking at that project at $7.6 million that Caney will undergo to find state loan and grant funds to pay that back. And their water bills are already over around $70 right now. So it's a very expensive venture for them to take on, and they're very serious about how they go through. But when the choice is to go without water or be at risk, where they've been the last 3 years, they're ready to make a step and look at that. So right now they're currently looking at those funding agencies to get confirmation from those funding agencies. We have to come up to have an option to purchase water from the entity. We just can't say, hey, we're negotiating with an entity. We have to know that both entities are in agreement and that there's a contract or an ordinance that we can rely on to say, hey, when and if we're ready and the funding comes through, we have some place to go. So that's our main part. I have thrown in here an executive summary. I'm not going to take time to go through it because the other parts of that, just so you guys are aware, this is part of a bigger picture, a very expensive picture for Caney. For projects of this going to the lenders of last resort, we check all the boxes there. They have a low, medium household income. They have drought vulnerability. It's actually an EPA Superfund site, so we'll be dealing with that during the course of the project. So each one of those have added to that cost. So I have provided the 5-year average summary, so you know that we're not making up the numbers that we're asking for. Our intent is if the funding can be acquired to do both the production and the distribution, we hope that water loss will drop to 10%. If not, you do have the historical numbers here where it is at 47%. So if it will continue as is, we're looking at 86, 87 million gallons a year. We hope if we get all the projects funded, that will drop down to 59 million gallons a year. So, that's 160,000 a day on average compared to their averages. The 250,000 would be max. So if we get these hot summer days, we'd be looking at diverting the 250,000 a day. So.
Okay.
Just a generic review. There's a plan and profile sheet. It's a hydraulic grade line.
Right.
Shows you the profile. For me as an engineer, this is the meats and potatoes. This shows me that, hey, I can transport water from point A to point B with a single booster pump station. And I'll be able to do it with class 200 PVC pipe, which is one of the cheaper materials, or we'll use poly, DR11. So I use a diversion rate of 300 gallons a minute. So our choice for our routing is actually pretty simple. The highway is along that route, so there's more avenues for us to get easements. Also, environmental is now a big issue when we undertake any project, go under due diligence. So the city's writing their 32 letters to our environmental partners to say, hey, is there something we need to watch for? Is there an archaeological site? Is there a historical site? Is there a hydric soils that we need to? So those are now underway, but they're also much more open if we stay along avenues that have already been disturbed. So the highway that's been there for years and years is an easy partner to transfers. So there's a preliminary route or preliminary budgets. Be happy to go into more questions. And Caney does have a preliminary engineering document that's about 3/4 of an inch thick. If you guys want to get into the intimate details, I'm sure the city would be happy to share that with you guys. We've shared some of that with your staff, so they're aware of where we're at. So from an engineer perspective, that's just some of the background there. I'll be happy to get into a little more if you guys have questions. If not, they're just in summary they're going through their open meeting and public notices. When they do turn in their applications, one of the things that come in those applications is they have to have an agreement or a form of the minutes that says that whoever they're purchasing water from is willing to do that. So we have looked at 2 other sources south, but that goes across the Oklahoma line. That gets into very heavy political debate and would have to get a direct allocation from the governor to transfer water across the state line. So we're not really wanting to go and take that route and go through that amount of politics, because there's a lot of precedents that would be set by those agreements with Texas, Colorado, and their other surrounding states. So much bigger decisions than we really want to go through to bring water to Caney.
Thank you.
I was just going to say is this is kind of worked out to a good situation of a relationship, simply because we do. The city commission, I think, understands we've got to settle this with the state before we can do anything going down. I think it is with the good faith is that, you know, they can proceed with work to get an answer, but it is one of those that, you know, we still have to have those with the state. We have to discuss our water rights and our future, and that is by the end of the year that we do it. Of course, then there'll be a bunch of other legal that'll come with it, but I think if the city commission's wishes, which is your decision, is, you know, that when you make a motion, it is in a good faith effort that we will have to work to a point of being able to present those other agencies, you know, with a document that is what you need to present to them. So I think that is, this is the first time you're kind of down in the weeds with this, but I think also, instead of being at the first of the year, we're towards the end of the year, so we will also have decisions to make real quick. So that should lead to answers very quickly. So.
One question on the 14.4 miles of the pipeline. How much of that is the city liable for, the cost?
None of it, as far as I know.
None?
We'll take it from your master meter right on the edge of town at Klein, and Caney will own and operate the entire system.
Okay, just for the public is their awareness on this?
Yeah, you guys won't manage anything outside city limits.
Okay. Thank you.
Just a monetary, because a lot of things do come down to money as well. It will generate another $150,000 to $200,000 a year in revenue on the water side. I haven't looked. I'm assuming that Caney would be one of your larger customers, and that helps lower your fixed cost that you assigned everyone else. So even though, as stated, like 6% of your water loss, if you spread those fixed costs from your existing staff, you'll see a reduction in cost to the citizens in the city of more than that.
Yeah.
So I've done enough rate studies that it typically comes out that way. So.
Actually, just to clarify, what they would be responsible for is we would supply a line right at what would be considered 10th and Klein.
Mm-hmm.
There's that little roadway that really doesn't exist, but they would set the meter box there, and then from that point on, all the line going out west would be their responsibility.
Okay.
Okay.
So how much priority, I mean, 47% loss seems awfully high to me in the system, so I'm sure it's a high priority for Caney to fix that, because you're losing basically half of your water, right? So, yeah.
Or going through it needlessly.
Right, yeah, yeah. Okay.
Draft vulnerability, those numbers.
Yes,
How
yeah,
many times
yeah.
out. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank
Yes.
you.
Thank you.
Okay. Have any discussion?
You know, so at this point, this is a, I mean, it's a discussion, and it's a engineering study and all that. So any motion tonight is not saying we are going to supply water to Caney. It's saying we're simply looking at supplying water to
Because
Caney.
we're
So,
It would be a good faith effort.
right.
Yeah.
It'd
Yes.
be a good
Yep.
faith effort.
Going to see what this all entails. It's going to be quite a bit to get what all it's going to entail.
It's basically a study.
Yeah.
Right.
Very
Right.
involved. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So, if there are any further discussion? Okay. Then I will make a motion that we proceed with the City of Caney water project as far as looking into what's going to need to be done as far as the City of Coffeyville is concerned.
I'll second.
Motion is made by Mayor Van Alster and seconded by Vice Mayor York to proceed with the City of Caney water project. Commissioner Jones?
Aye.
Commissioner Maples?
Aye.
Mayor Van Alster?
Aye.
Vice Mayor York?
Aye.
Commissioner Swindell?
Aye.
Okay. All right. Next, we have resolution
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
23-60, which is a resolution to allow the Coffeyville Police Department to apply for the fiscal year 2024 federal Edward J. Byrne Memorial Justice Assistant Grant. Our Chief of Police, Quinn Bromley, will make comments tonight.
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. Good evening. I'll be brief. The Police Department is seeking Commission approval to apply for the 2024 Edward J. Byrne, Federal Edward J. Byrne Justice Assistance Grant, otherwise known as the JAG Grant. The Federal Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant is made available each year for law enforcement to assist in numerous projects, including officer safety. In 2019, the Police Department applied for and was awarded the Edward J. Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant, which allowed us to upgrade our antiquated in-car digital video recorders. As you are all aware, digital video evidence is now the new norm in law enforcement. Prosecutors and investigators all rely heavily on video evidence to investigate and prosecute crimes. The current version of the digital video camera system provides our citizens of Coffeyville with vastly improved technology, enabling both law enforcement and prosecutors the evidence to effectively prosecute criminal cases, improve officer safety and citizen officer contact. If awarded, the grant would enable the police department to equip our newest patrol units with digital cameras. Apologize, my allergies are draining. The wireless kit and supporting equipment are part of the long-range acoustic device and was previously awarded to the state through the state of Kansas through the 2020 JAG. Our crisis negotiator team, which is part of the countywide crisis team, utilizes the LRAD system during critical incidents and requires crystal clear communications. The wireless kit will enable our crisis negotiator team officers to communicate with individuals from safe distances up to 980 feet remotely. The kit includes a MP3, which will allow us to download bilingual commands pre-recorded, along with some additional accessories. The total project is $45,487. I want to make it clear that there is no local match. So if we were awarded this project, the state of Kansas would fully fund this project. Wouldn't cost our local taxpayers any money. I would be happy to answer any questions. I do recommend that you do authorize us to apply for this grant. We'll do that first thing in the morning, and hopefully in a few months we'll know whether or not we were awarded.
Again, how much was the grant?
Pardon me?
How much was the grant?
Oh, I'm sorry. $45,487 for the total project. The cars cameras was a total of $39,662.40, and then the balance was for the wireless kit for the communication system. And I'd be happy to answer any questions for you.
So what's the timeline on the grant?
I will apply. The deadline is Thursday, I believe, at midnight.
Okay. All right.
And then it takes typically a couple months for us to hear back whether or not we were awarded the process. A lot of it just depends on the grant group reviewing the grants that they receive and prioritizing those.
Sure, it's a very competitive grant, right? So every department out there is probably putting in for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There'll be a lot of departments.
Yeah.
It's competitive, very competitive. We've been very fortunate. We've been awarded a number of these grants in the last 8 years that in my tenure with the department. I think we've only missed out on 2.
Okay. Last time we got it was in 2020?
Correct.
Okay.
Well,
can't see anything wrong.
I see nothing wrong with that. If there's no other questions, I move to approve Resolution R-23-60 as presented.
I'll second.
I'm sorry, was that Commissioner Swindell?
Yeah.
Thank you. Motion is made by Commissioner Maples and seconded by Commissioner Swindell.
Yep.
Oh,
Jones made the motion.
thank you. By Commissioner Jones and seconded by Commissioner Swindell to approve Resolution R-23-60 as presented. Commissioner Maples.
Aye.
Mayor Van Oster.
Aye.
Vice Mayor York.
Aye.
Commissioner Swindell.
Aye.
Commissioner Jones.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
very much.
Quinn. We appreciate
Good
it.
luck. Okay. We now will move on to Resolution R-23-61, which is a resolution to purchase wood utility poles for the electric distribution. Our Superintendent of Electric Distribution, Mr. Steve Pratt, will make comments.
Mayor, Commissioners, good evening.
Good evening, Steve.
I'm just here tonight to get authorization to purchase a couple loads of poles. Our inventory we keep track of. With COVID and with the times we've had, I just don't like to get to a point where we're too low. It's getting where it seems like every time we go out for poles, there's different treatments, different kinds. This particular time we've gone out to 2 different people. One was only really available to get us the creosote poles that I prefer. The life on those poles are 70 to 100 years. We've been forced in the past to have to just buy certain kinds of poles. To me, it makes sense to get one that lasts as long as it can. So out of the people that we got, we had 2 vendors. And so based upon our recommendation, we would like authorization to purchase 25 40-foot Class 2 poles and 20 45-foot Class 2 poles.
So I'm just curious, how many poles have you used this year?
You know, I keep track every locate that I do in a book, and at the end of the year, I keep an inventory of how many poles we replace. I know we've bought at least 2 loads of these poles for sure. Generally, we don't buy 2 loads at a time. So this is probably the first time I've been in front of the commission to get authorization to buy poles.
Yeah.
But I've just learned that when it comes to transformers, when it comes to poles, we're better off to keep a closer eye on things and keep a good stock.
Okay. All right. Okay, does anybody have any questions?
Mayor, if there are no questions, I'll move to approve resolution R2361 as presented.
Aye.
Motion is made by Vice Mayor York and seconded by Commissioner Jones to approve Resolution R-23-61 as presented. Commissioner Jones?
Aye.
Mayor Van Oster?
Aye.
Vice Mayor York?
Aye.
Commissioner Swindell?
Aye.
And Commissioner Maples?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Steve.
you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
Okay, next we have Resolution R-23-62, which is a resolution to execute a real estate agreement for the purchase of 904 West 9th Street for the USDA Section 523 Mutual Self-Help Housing Program. Our Director of Housing, Charla Brown, will make comments.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Commissioners.
Good evening, Charlotte.
I'm here before you tonight to request approval for the purchase of 904 West 9th for the Mutual Self-Help Housing Section 523 grant. If it's approved, we're going to utilize it to build one of the homes for the grant. Upon the approval, we're going to begin assisting homeowners with the supervision-led and contractor-finished construction tasks, and any day now. We're waiting on that approval. We've got 3 out of 4 of the approved families, so hopefully by the next commission meeting, all 3 of us are going to be here, hopefully with some good news.
Good.
So the lots will be purchased by the city, and then the homeowner will reimburse the city the lot costs through the grant loan. So it'll be no out-of-pocket cost after the grant loan goes through for the homeowner. So staff recommends approval of the resolution to authorize the mayor and the city clerk to execute a real estate purchase agreement between the Coffeyville Neighborhood Initiative as a seller and the city of Coffeyville, Kansas as a buyer for the property located at 904 West 9th Street, Coffeyville, Kansas. I'll be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
The family that's picked, do they have to put in blood, sweat, and tears into this project?
They do.
It's required,
it's called,
isn't it?
It's called sweat equity. It's 35 to 40 hours a week, and it's based on the time they have available. It's most of them do work. That's how they pay for it. So it's whenever they're available to work. They work 40 hours a week, and it's for 6 to 8 months out of the year. I mean, that's when the homes are built. So it's not like they're building them for 2 years. It's just 6 to 8 months. So and they'll have a brand new home.
And we have a supervisor that oversees
We
that
do, and
construction.
he is ready to go.
I imagine he is. Yes.
He is ready.
Yes.
We're all ready to go. So, like I said, seriously, any day now, we are ready for USDA to call. So,
Well, the reason I ask, I know a lot of people have asked me about this project. And
Yes.
it's coming from the horse's mouth, I think that way they get the true facts.
yes, and here in Coffeyville, we're 1 out of every 3.4 are low income, and low income now, a family of 4 is $60,000 a year. So that really isn't like your 18 to 20,000 low income. So
Right.
we're really urging people. We have a lot of people now applying because $60,000 is the family of 4 low income now. So a lot of city employees, teachers, a lot of people are applying right now. So we have a lot of people.
This could be a good thing.
It's a really good thing.
Really
It's
good.
amazing. In the next 2 years, we're going to have 20 new homes up. We have 14 moderate income housing home. I mean, there's a lot of changes going up next 2 years.
How many lots have we purchased so far?
We have all 20.
You have all 20?
Yes, this is gonna earmark the final.
Okay.
The final 20.
Okay.
So, yep.
That's great.
We are good to go.
Okay.
And we've
right.
basically been waiting to get 4 approved to get
Yes,
started.
yes,
Yeah.
and we have
Okay.
got this last one. Actually, our USDA person is back from surgery as of Friday, and
Oh,
so
good.
she has this last one that she is. And when I say any day, we are waiting on the phone call to say that they are approved.
Okay.
So
Very good.
we're ready to go.
Well, I'm excited.
Thank you.
I am
Thank you.
too.
Well,
Okay, if there's no, oh, go ahead, sorry.
I was gonna say, if there's no other questions,
Yeah.
I move to approve Resolution R-23-62 as presented.
I'll second it.
I'm sorry, was that Mayor Van
Mayor,
Oster?
yeah.
Thank you.
And thank you guys for your support of this program.
Thank you.
Thank
We're
you
excited
for all
for
your
you.
work.
Thank you.
Motion is made by Commissioner Maples and seconded by Mayor Van Oster to approve Resolution R-23-62 as presented. Commissioner Swindell?
Aye.
Commissioner Maples?
Aye.
Vice Mayor York?
Aye.
Mayor Van Oster?
Aye.
Commissioner Jones?
Aye.
Okay, thanks again, Charlotte.
Yeah.
Okay, next we have ordinance G-23-05, which is an ordinance to update certain electric rate schedules and PCA, or power cost adjustment. Our city manager, Mark Hall, will make comments on this.
Mayor and Commissioners, the City of Coffeyville has been working with utility financial solutions, reviewing electric rates, the city's cost of electricity service, as well as the city's monthly power cost adjustment clause. Utility Financial Solutions is recommending that the power cost adjustment, which is PCA, which is part of the overall electric rate structure for the city, be adjusted from a month-to-month average calculation to a monthly calculation based on a rolling 6 months.
Okay.
So that is a minor change. The intent of this charge is to levelize the monthly PCA, removing some of the monthly volatility and swings, although each rate code is included in the attached ordinance, which it is one of those, you see these immense amount of information. This is just cutting through this. Please note the only change is being proposed this evening is to the final rate code PCA-23, as all the other codes are unchanged. And that is, just want to stress, this is just simply moving from a month to month to a 6-month rolling. And the rest of the codes remain the same, or rates remain the same. This is just trying to stabilize that PCA.
Okay. Okay. All right. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, if not, I will move to approve ordinance G-23-05 as presented.
Second.
Motion is made by Mayor Van Oster and seconded by Vice Mayor York to approve ordinance G-23-05 as presented. Commissioner Swindell?
Aye.
Vice Mayor York?
Aye.
Mayor Van Oster?
Aye.
Commissioner Maples?
Aye.
Commissioner Jones?
Aye.
Okay, the next is Resolution R-23-63, which is a resolution to engage the League of Kansas Municipalities Executive Administration Physician Search Services for the position of the Coffeyville City Manager. City Manager Mark Hall will make comments on this.
Mayor, Commissioners, I've included in the packet some information. They call the program LEAPS. It is one of those, is through the Kansas League, the League of Kansas Municipalities. Of course, the acronym everybody is is LKM. It is one of those, they service entire Kansas. The thing is also is majority of all the other states have a league also. What they offer, and they've been doing this for many years and have conducted searches. I want to say on a personal note, they have improved over time. They offer something which, of course, they understand the community because they are going to represent a Kansas city. They know what's going on. They know as far as, Kansas law. They know that, what can comply, reciprocate. But they have a better look and understanding of Kansas should candidates come from outside the state. They have a network. They will advertise all over the country. Other even private executive search firms utilize that information because theirs is to find as many candidates to apply for their openings. So they do want people to look at their sites to find sites in Kansas because a candidate looking for placement would look all over. So I really feel that they will do a fine job, and of course their price is very reasonable. What you see there is 2 to maybe even 3 times less than a firm. And some of you are familiar in the past, that can get up to $40,000. So I believe this is Kansas. The League of Kansas Municipality will work closely with the City Commission. And if you look on the page 5, this gives you a timeline that what they're proposing works out that an offer would be made in November. And that offer would be made in November. And then, of course, you have, depending on the candidate, they could be very well in December. Of course, we have a holiday. But if not, they could shortly commit to being in January, which, I'm here to help and until, the end of December. But I would recommend them, like I say, we use the league for other things.
Sure.
We can call up the league and basically on any issue facing the municipality, and we seek their legal advice. So I feel it's a good group and they can start immediately.
Okay, do we have any discussion?
I don't have an issue with using the league. I would like to explore any other possibilities as well before we.
I would too, and I have a couple. I'm not saying no to the league.
No.
But, so, until we can discuss this, myself, if agreeable with everybody, has to agree, I would like to maybe table this until our next meeting.
Okay.
And then we'll go from there, and
We can,
Yeah.
we'll get a bid from SGR.
we can see. And
That's who,
I've got,
that's who you used last time.
yeah. So,
Okay.
but just, I
There's
think we
nothing
need to
against the league.
visit.
I think we just
No.
need
We
to
need-
look at all the alternatives out there, not just
Right.
a single one.
You bet.
Yep.
Yeah, so at this time, if that's okay, I would make a motion that we table this until our next meeting.
That'd be fine.
I'll second that.
Yep.
Sorry.
Motion is made by Mayor Van Oster and seconded by Commissioner Maples to table Resolution R2363 at this time. Commissioner Jones?
Aye.
Commissioner Swindell?
Aye.
Commissioner Maples?
Aye.
Vice Mayor York?
Aye.
Mayor Van Oster?
Aye. Okay, moving on, we have city manager's report.
I know the commission's aware, but sales tax report, that
Yes.
if you see,
Very good.
through August, things are going quite well. Shop local, like I say, the sales tax at work, you currently, which is being offered, is you have the downtown, which is a 50-50 match up to $5,000 that can help them with their facade. I think you'll see, and you've been seeing the improvements of the Sycamore Park, and that's coming along. The park, just to let you know, that it will be done by the end of the year as promised. You do have a path coming, you have shelters, and you've had some surprise elements, but you do have a donor that is going to donate an additional, of course we had the Beach Foundation and Pete's, which the signs are up, but you have another that I'll announce, but it is for a child's, we'll say, early childhood swing play. They'll have that tandem swing where the mother and child can sit and swing together, and then of course the bucket seats that they'll sing, and then there'll be 3 spring riders, that they can go on. So this will be a little added extra area. They understood that we're trying to do greater things and make the park bigger, and so they said, well, we've got something. So I'll probably announce that next meeting, but staff is, of course, we say that we hope it rains and weather changes, less heat, less evaporation, but it is one of those, we're wrapping up things and pushing to that. We don't know if this will change real quickly, but it is, I commend staff. They're moving to get projects done just in case the weather should change quickly. To bring up, and I want to stress on, the downtown project. The best way to explain it is we did for safety, and so not knowing the exact details, and then you have to get commission's approval. Our ideal going in was to sit there and go, we knew there was going to be some prep work. We knew that, but the majority of that, when you have to cut out the sidewalk, cut it out, then you have to pull a column after you unbolted it. And you do this one at a time because you can't have just open things all going on. Then you've got to cover that. We knew that was really the project. That was really the, oh my, this thing is we're going to have closed street. You've got a big thing, you've got a crane up in the air, and it is, safety is always a concern. So we knew that. When we went in, we talking safety, we have some more safety issues, and especially now that the the awning is being removed. Things have presented itself. It is one of those that owners, I don't think, were aware of some of the things that we are finding. Some were aware. It is one of those that is a part of this. It's a safety concern. It's going into this. There will be certain situations where the front entrance will not be possible. Now we have, and is over some, a direct fall line, which that's what we did, is a direct fall line for brick. You can't get away from it. That's why we went into this. We had tiles and brick falling. It is with that move, it is exposure. A year and a half ago, on certain incidents, we went in to explain the situation that needed to be corrected. That has not been corrected, but it will need to be corrected for the safety. There are certain things that the owner of the building has been working with us, and we do understand they're working for a solution, and we've allowed that time. There's others that now you will have to correct that safety problem, but it is one of those, they've known about it for a year and a half. And so it's not like an overnight surprise. Other than that, we try not to, and today, the best way to explain it, we're at the mercy when they go over and work, but the intention is give us 72 hours to make sure that we, get the message out. It was funny because it was, okay, we want to come tomorrow, or yesterday, and we want, because there's nobody on those streets on Walnut, the wraparound, we want to try to see if this thing's going to work. And, they get up, and just taking down those panels on one side took an hour. And so you're sitting there going, they've got that, okay, you've tested it, well, let's go over and test it on Walnut. And they went over and tested it on Walnut, and next thing you know, they're starting this morning. So, well, Thomas ran around and went to everybody that he could, saying, hey, this is happening. Some feel that they didn't get noticed. It was an effort. But the thing is because of the big crane, they actually scooted back to pull these off, and they didn't know that angle until started doing it. So it pushed them into that second lane. And with that, of course, we went out and people and explaining and yada and this and we've got to do this. So what was determined is you all shut down over lunch. You shut down over lunch. And then they said, okay, we'll do that. We'll pick it back up. But they shut down over lunch. It was one of those that, they opened it up for that brief time, and then they started back. The south side, except for the gentleman that was here tonight, he lives in upstairs apartments. Oh. Yeah. Anyway, his interest is from the front. Right. So we've talked about that when I had a broom in my hand. Yeah. And it was one of those is getting in. So, they shut it down, and they'll stop at a safety point. Mm-hmm. So in other words, it won't be a situation where, we're going to leave something dangerous. Right. They will get to a stopping point and move across. It's been a little inconvenience, but with this project, I think it's an accident that was waiting to happen. We've had questions of what's the city going to do, and the awning was never attached to the building. Right. So we had one business owner sitting there going, well, this is the city's responsibility, and as I explained with respect, is that one, the awning was never attached to the buildings. In fact, there is a gap. Mm-hmm. There is a gap. And so the elements, if it was driving rain, they went down in between. We've had pigeons, we've had blocking to try to keep from things. Mm-hmm. But all said and done, it is one of those that this was separated. We went into this project and we went into last year with an understanding that safety is of an issue. Mm-hmm. And it is one of those that, that is. The pigeons, yes, and that's when we talked about benefit. Yeah, there's a food source, they're going to always be there, but the benefit is they won't be living up under that. And I will say the pigeon waste is less on the north side that doesn't have an awning than it is on the south side with that. So it's an added benefit. We plan on, and hopefully this is Thursday, because this thing keeps changing on me, is Thursday they will finish. We will have a little of the fill work that you've seen, but as far as that, they are not coming back until November. And that's when we were saying is this project is, we would do prep work. We didn't know how fast they would do the prep work, but going into this, is they said, well, if you're going to try to take this all down in 1 month, because you remember that in December, we're busy. I mean, downtown gets busy.
Yes, it does.
And this stuff. So if we can, and that's what changed, one for safety, but if we can do this prep work and leave those columns standing, because those are what's the majority of the work. That's it. If we can do this prep work, that's just something we don't have to mess with. And so it was, go ahead and do the prep. But the thing that's going to use that crane, block off the street, and we'll just say safety won't come until November.
Okay.
And I just wanted you to know that I know there's been, the statement in November, well, we didn't know that they wanted to go ahead and do as much prep work because the timeline is this whole project is done in November. They just sit there and go, well, we got an opening right now, we can get all this done. So I wanted to let the commission know where we're at. We're communicating. It's just one of those that I think, in a good way, it is not being drug out for a long period of time. It's getting in and doing this. And most of the South has a southern entrance that they use. But we're not doing it intentional. So, if there's any questions, I'd be glad to answer those, but thanks staff for all that they do.
All right, thank you, Mark. All right, we now have comments from commissioners and staff.
I do have something.
Okay.
I grew up in West Coffeyville.
Okay.
And I have noticed 6th and 7th Street in West Coffeyville are hideous. You about lose your car, and I have a little car, and it about lost it the other day. It's awful. It's torn up. There's soft sink places. You have to go back from side to side to side, and it needs some kind of attention. I don't know what it would cost if we could work it into the budget, but I feel sorry for the people living on those streets. And it is asphalt. With probably a cinder base or gravel base.
There's, and I'll just, best way to explain it, we'll see what we can do. I think that's been since I've been here. And I'll just take just a minute, is somewhere back in time, the vision of streets and the care of streets was lost. It's not to pick on anybody one, but then it became just something that snowballed, that basically you were just putting things on top of things. We roughly have 108 miles of street and highway in the city. If you did at $500,000 a mile, which is very cheap, especially if it'll be double that if you have to take it down and start over with a base. But if you did the 500,000 and you do the math that with 2 sales taxes is a conservative estimate of 16 million over 10 years. So if you sit there and say the 54, how many 10-year periods is at 16 million every 10 years? Not every year, but every year. How long would it take to work with or through our system to actually get something accomplished? And that's where it's come down that you're looking that if we start now, and it's hard to tell, but you're looking at 40 years at a minimum. And that is hard to understand because why do we have 1-inch curves? Why do we have potholes? There will always be something to fill potholes, but that is just like our highway. it's nobody's fault, but where it's led us to is if we don't be honest with the public and give them a budget and give them what we're going to do, it is one of those, we'll keep throwing stuff on top. We'll never get anything fixed to the point that I pay property taxes. I live in this town. When is my street going to be done? And that was a question that we faced was Highland. Highland was a good thing, but if you didn't live on Highland, when you going to do my street?
Yeah.
And that is where we're at. So I will be always honest with the public, and of course you, is we'll get out and Bobby Joe, we can do a lot of things, but it is one of those that I think the tough question is and that was why I was mentioning status quo. Status quo is you give no financial resource to address streets. You give none, you just sit there and go, we'll vote no. But it will be one of those that you'll see is with no money, you'll never get any streets repaired. And that is the sad thing. It is. But I think that's why the public, I think they want to see streets, but the more we're honest with them, they can actually understand this is how we got to go and we got to start. And we got to start doing something to correct the situation. And we can't keep going, yeah, you're on the list, if you're not on the list. So I hope that answered. We'll get and see what we can do.
Okay.
And I've got that written down, so we'll take a look at it.
Okay, and I got one more question.
Okay.
I'm a girl.
Yes.
And I need to know how the water meters work. When you take a reading, is there a large battery somewhere that...
What is going on now is the water meters are usually, and they'll be digital. Water meters have just a little, we'll just say a little spinner inside.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how many gallons are going through that meter.
Mm-hmm.
The thing with water meters, that gets off and worn over time, so it starts letting more water go by and not recording it. These are going to be digital, and what they will do is we can sit in City Hall or at a location, we can press a button, it'll read all the meters.
But how?
It goes through and it goes and
Wireless.
pings off
Okay.
little towers,
Okay.
sending signals,
Satellites.
and they go to, and you'll see these things all over the city, but they'll ping off this one, and they'll go to the electric meter. An electric meter will read the electric meter, but will ping off the water meter.
Okay.
So that's how you'll do it. It is one of those that there's just little points, and this is whenever they go, they call it fixed read, is they have to strategically place these things, and especially you don't put it behind a grain elevator. You know, they are looking at hills, they are looking at high points. We had in a project that was involved before was our water tower. You know, it got shot over the grain elevator. So there's a lot of things, but that's how they communicate.
Okay.
Is they just go electronically, just pinging off these, and meanwhile it's picking up meters all along. They're sending out a signal, but that signal from us goes and bounces off all these repeaters, these poles that will go and start bouncing off, hitting the meters.
Well, I thought it was a satellite and pinging, but I've had people ask me, well, how are they going to read the meter? You know.
Yeah, it's
Well,
actually
that's
a
what
wireless.
it is.
It's wireless.
It's a wireless signal.
It is one of those that it'll hit, if you had to say it's a pole, it just repeats that signal going around, around. So there'll be poles that'll go bang, 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 bang to read that meter.
Okay, that's kind of what I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
I haven't been up here for a while, so.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
The AMI projects, actually, I mean, it started back in, gosh, 03, 04 that we started looking at this.
Yeah, we were looking at it too.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
07.
every commission's kicked
Yeah.
that can
Oh,
down the
yeah.
road until
Mhm.
finally this last commission finally got it done, but it's, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a very expensive project.
Yeah,
but-
I know.
But the citizens will benefit greatly from it, as will the utilities. so-
Well, and like I said, there, you won't have any non-reading.
Yep.
You won't
Yep.
have those. If we should, somebody, the signal,
Mhm.
it'll send us a signal that it can't read. Then you do send somebody
Right.
out
Right.
to either cure the situation or to read. But it's not a situation where a human element can sit there and not read
Estimate.
a
Right,
meter.
right.
Don't
Yes.
estimate.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but this also would allow people to go in and look at their bill real time, correct?
Yes. Oh, this is
So, yeah,
technology.
Chris is giving me one of those. Yeah.
Technology has allowed things to really advance than the old,
Right.
Hunt them down, well, they haven't turned in their read yet, type thing.
Okay.
So there's a lot of information they'll be able to have.
Okay.
All right. Okay, anybody else have any questions?
I just want to make an announcement of Vanguard's breakfast is this Saturday,
Oh,
7
good.
to 10:30. Pancakes this time, so.
Are you
usually-
cooking?
Huh?
Are you cooking?
I am going to be out of town, conveniently.
Sure.
Out of town. I've worked every other one.
Uh-huh.
Conveniently going to be out of town, out of state. That's not hard to do.
Okay. All right. Anybody else?
Nope.
I don't either. Okay, if not, then I will make a motion to adjourn.
Motion is made by Mayor Van Oster and seconded by Vice Mayor York.